Good evening. Oh, that's so much better. Welcome to the Associated Church. We are delighted to have you here. If we've had you before or not, either way. Let's make sure that we have you again sometime. We're glad to be here with our august panelists, and we welcome them. We are pretty darn sure that this is going to be a great presentation. So, if it's not, it's my fault. Come and see me afterward. But otherwise, if you need restrooms, they're out this door here or here. And they are on that direction over here and that direction over here. What am I missing? There will be refreshments afterwards. I know that's an important part. Good enough. Okay, I'll turn you over to Mr. Allen.
Introduce to you our distinguished panel. Julie Anderson is currently the Executive Director of Transitional Housing of Steele County. She has served that role since 2009. Prior to her time at Transitional Housing, she was employed as a field executive for the Girl Scout Council of Cannon Valley, and later as Executive Director of United Way of Steele County and the Riverland Community College Foundation. She currently lives in Owatonna with her daughter, Emma. Julie Anderson. Nancy Wilson holds a master's degree, Nancy Wilson was a singer, back in the day. Huh? Right? She and her cousin or sister were the band Heart. Well, anyway, that's enough of that. Yeah. Nancy Williams holds a master's degree in social work from St. Thomas University. She is licensed as a school social worker and a licensed independent clinical social worker. Nancy has worked for 32 years with the Owatonna Public Schools at all levels from preschool to high school. The past 20-plus years, she has been the school social worker at Owatonna High School. And during this time, she has worked with community members and churches to implement the OHS Husky Pantry. The pantry supports students in need, including those identified as homeless, with food, clothing, school supplies, and hygiene supplies. Nancy, along with the other 10 school social workers at Owatonna Public Schools, are trained in identifying and providing the needed support and resources to students and families who are facing housing instability. In addition to her work with homeless youth, she provides ongoing individual and group counseling to students experiencing significant mental health disorders, family struggles, and/or chemical health needs which are negatively impacting them in the school setting. Nancy Williams. Jolayne Mohs and her husband Scott moved to Owatonna 20 years ago. She spent 12-plus years working for a mental health agency and doing in-home and community-based mental health work with children and families. Jolayne is currently the Director of Outreach at Trinity Lutheran Church and the President of Oak Hill Community Connections. She and her husband Scott have 3 teenage boys that skid across the finish line of each day with their activities, work, and teenage boy shenanigans and nonsense. Now, we all have to wonder where they learned about the shenanigans and nonsense. Oh, their dad. Okay. You can say that. Jolayne Mohs. Amanda Starks was originally the executive director of Rachel's Light, a women and children's shelter that she helped open the doors to on September 9, 2019. And since then, she has helped merge both Hospitality House of Owatonna and Rachel's Light to form the Lighthouse of Southern Minnesota. And she is the executive director of which she is the executive director. One entity with women and children's program and a men's program in separate locations, and eventually a family program coming the end of this year. She also sits on the Oak Hill Community Connections Board and is actively involved in the design of the new shelter space for the women and children's side and the family side. She is very passionate about helping individuals recreate their story and break down barriers to help them sustain permanent housing. She strongly believes that we do better when we work together. Amanda Starks. Now, there are these cards around here at the end of the aisles or something. If you have any questions for any of the presenters, just feel free to write them on there, and somebody, maybe Leslie, will pick them up and get them up front. And with that, we'll turn it over to the stars of the show, and I don't know who's starting. Yeah? Okay.
What a great audience here as I look out and see lots of friendly faces of people that have worked in the Owatonna Public Schools over the years. Like he mentioned, I've been in our district for 32 years now, and certainly have seen lots of changes in our schools and in our community. So imagine trying to focus on your studies while worrying about where you'll sleep tonight. Unfortunately, this is the reality for thousands of students throughout the country. And right here in Owatonna, we have that same issue. So currently, we have identified about 170 students, early childhood through 12th grade at Owatonna Public Schools. About 170 kids have been identified as fitting criteria for homelessness. We usually use the term FIT, families in transition, but not everybody knows that that is the same. Of those 170 kids, about 20 of them are unaccompanied youth. And an unaccompanied youth is generally a 17 or 18-year-old that is basically living on their own. They might be with a friend's family, they might be living with a boyfriend or girlfriend and their family, but they are not with a guardian at all. Of those, again, 170 students, many of them are doubled up. And I can explain a little bit later when we get into it what each of the categories kind of are that qualify as homeless or fit, but just have an idea that we're talking about a lot of kids in our district. So academically, homelessness creates many challenges. Without a stable home, students struggle to complete homework, attend school regularly, and concentrate in class. They may lack access to basic supplies, hotspots, or internet access, even a quiet place to study, making it really difficult to succeed. Socially, homelessness can lead to feelings of isolation. Many students hide their struggles out of shame and avoiding friendships and social activities. So again, when you talk about 170 kids, do we know that for sure we are identifying everyone? No, of course we're not. Mentally and emotionally, the impact is profound. The stress of uncertainty, hunger, and instability can lead to anxiety, depression, and even trauma. Without proper support, these challenges can affect their well-being for years to come. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about what MDE, the Minnesota Department of Education, has as a definition of homelessness. And to know that, you have to understand the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistant Act. So that defines homelessness as children or youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. This can include youth that are living in the following situations: shelters or transitional housing programs, motels, hotels, campgrounds or vehicles, doubled up with friends or relatives because family cannot find or afford housing, and then also even abandoned buildings, public spaces, cars, or other inadequate accommodations. I kind of explained what unaccompanied youth means, but our kids that experience homelessness have certain rights that are provided by this federal McKinney-Vento Act. The eligible children have the right to a free and appropriate public education. They have a right to enroll in school immediately, even if they are lacking transcripts or documents that are normally required for enrollment, we need to enroll them right away. And to enroll and attend classes while those documents or transcripts are being gathered. They are able to enroll in the local school or continue in the last school attended, even if the guardian's if that is the guardian's preference and it is feasible. So for instance, let's imagine a family that started in Owatonna. For whatever reason, they are evicted from their home, they can't pay their rent, something has happened, they are homeless. They go, and this is real life situations that happen every day right here in Owatonna. They go to live with, let's just say, mom's sister in Waseca, or another family member in Blooming Prairie, or in wherever, out of the city limits. What it used to be years ago is then kids would have to be enrolled into a new school, meet a new teacher, try to get accustomed to new surroundings, only to maybe be back in Owatonna within 2 or 3 or 6 months and then have to start that process all over again. If families believe that Owatonna is their place, their permanent place where they want to end up and they hope to be here, then we will bus children from Blooming Prairie, from Waseca, from other surrounding areas so that we can keep one thing consistent in their lives, and that is their school, their teacher, their classmates, their support connections right here at school. And so with that, of course, we're able to see much more success when we don't break up their consistency in a school setting. And we pay for transportation to get them. I had a girl last school year that ended up in Lakeville, and it was middle of her senior year, and mom believed that, Owatonna was where they eventually would want to be. We bused her every single day in a van that picked her up at 6:30 in the morning in Lakeville, brought her to Owatonna High School, and then brought her back home to Lakeville at 5 o'clock at night. And that was in her best interest. And that's, again, another decision that's made between parent, and then if the student is a high school student, they're definitely a part of that decision making, and then the school also. So those are some of the things. Additionally, before everyone had access to free breakfast and free lunch, our students that qualified as homeless right away were granted that eligibility without doing paperwork and waiting on income eligibility. It was just given. So those are some of the things. Also, if they would like to attend athletics or activities, we can waive those fees because we really want kids to be engaged and connected and a part of our school community. So those are some of the things that we do. Like was mentioned earlier, I am one of 12 school social workers in Owatonna. We have one in every single building, and then at the middle school and high school, we have multiple school social workers that are working with kiddos that are in this position, but also that have a range of other mental health or chemical health or family issues. And we're making those determinations about if they qualify for FIT. We've added a new portion of enrollment paper information that asks the question, are you in a doubled up situation or living with somebody else because of financial reasons? Are you, if you just put are you homeless, nobody thinks they're homeless, right? Because there's stigma attached to it, and in a lot of people's minds, even the people that are in those situations, they think homeless means living under a bridge or living out on a park bench. But, again, under these guidelines, when you do not have your own
ability to have your own place that is adequate, and you're maybe doubled up with family for an extended period of time until you can get the funds to have your own place, then you would qualify as that. So we ask specifically kind of the questions about living with family members or living in a shelter or living, and then when people mark those, that's our opportunity to do the outreach to them, and that would be done by a school social worker. And then at that point in time, we talk to them about the resources that we're able to offer within the school setting. Each of our schools have a partnership with our area churches. So we have backpack programs, but additionally, our social workers are talking to families about our community resources. They're talking about transitional housing. They're talking about Rachel's Light. They're sharing about community pathways and unique finds and Salvation Army when we had it, and other opportunities within our community. We want our families to be connected with all of those areas, but also they might need food tonight and they might not have transportation to get places to get that. So again, we have this partnership for kind of a backpack program. At the high school, we've really advocated for this to be bigger than just a backpack program. Again, we're getting the kids between the high school and the ALC where you get that unaccompanied youth population, where they may not know where they're sleeping from night to night, and they might be couch surfing and different places that I just felt like we needed more in our settings. And so that's how, probably about 10 years ago, the OHS Husky Pantry was born. Originally in the old school, it was just a small kind of office space in front of my office, where things were shoved into bins and boxes and coat closets, and it was not ideal in any way, and yet it served the purpose of us trying to be able to provide something. When the new high school was being built, I was a very strong voice in saying, we are doing a lot of great things in our music programs, in our athletic programs, with the facilities for all of these wonderful, in our classrooms with technology. Let's make sure that we're supporting all of our kids. And we have kids that need a pantry, and they need not to step over a box and dig through a bin to see if they can find a sweatshirt because they don't have something to wear and it's too cold. Help me to let's make something that feels more dignified for our students. And thank goodness for Corey Kath, who's our principal and a very strong advocate as well. And just the school district in general, Jeff Elstead and Bob Olson and everyone that said, you know what, this is important and we're willing to designate a place for this. So the Husky Pantry, the OHS Husky Pantry was formed, and it's right next to my office, just down, very close, but it's not in my office. And we have everything from school supplies to blankets to coats and hats and mittens and boots and shoes, all donations, all donated to us. And then in addition, we have the food that comes through Trinity. That is mainly non-perishable food items, but actually now that we have a full-size fridge and freezer, we have the opportunity to have more fresh fruit and vegetables and lettuce and eggs and bread and things like that. Then we also have asked for, because it's a need, and and people have donated hygiene supplies and even cleaning supplies. And we have the space for it. Like we have built-ins, and kids can come in and basically shop on their own with, me with them. So it just feels right. It feels like we're able to give them something that it's already hard enough, right, to ask for help, but then to not have a place that feels, gives you some dignity. I think we've come a long ways with that. So, and you are all welcome. I'm a big promoter of please come and tour the high school and come and tour my pantry. And I've had lots and lots of community members and people that donate come up and look at it and see what they are donating to, and it is used on a very regular basis. I probably have about 20 kids that, and not every single one of them meet criteria for homelessness. There might be other kids that just have food insecurity issues at home as well. They are welcome to the pantry. We just make a priority to really let our kids that are facing homelessness know that this is for them. So kids are able to access that as needed. What else do I want to say? A lot of people ask about donations. Donations, there's not an activity account through the high school where people can write a check to the Husky Pantry. So please don't do that. There's no such thing as that. What you can do is you can talk with me and find out what we're low on, and then I can give you items that you can donate. Or if people want to donate but really don't know what we're in need of, or don't want to go overboard on items that we have enough of but want to make sure there are funds available as items get depleted, they will often go out and buy a gift card, a Walmart, a Target, Cashwise, Aldi, any of the places in town, even Quick Trip, and then donate the gift card to the pantries, or gift cards to the pantry, and then I'm able to continually restock items as needed. Also, if you want like a non-taxable donation, you can make a check to the 761 Foundation, and then if you specifically wanted to go to the Husky Pantry, you have to put that on the check, and in it, you would just make it to the Random Acts of Kindness OHS Homeless Fund. And then out of that fund, and we've had a lot of major businesses give bigger amounts, 1,000 or 2,000 to that account, and then through that we can do things like driver's ed classes. By the way, it's $400 to attend driver's ed if you are a student now. Can you even believe it? I mean, that's a hardship on everybody, right? But certainly people that don't have money for food or for rent. So we're able to get those kids their driver's ed covered. Also things like leadership conferences, DECA, things like that you have to pay money to, go and be a part of these out-of-town events or state activities. We can help through that fund for the bigger items like that. So lastly, I just want to say that student homelessness is not just a housing issue. It's an education issue, a mental health issue, and a community issue. It's our responsibility to support and uplift these students, ensuring that they have the resources and stability that they need to survive and to thrive. Because when we invest in them, we invest in a brighter future for all of us. Does anyone have questions for me? Thank you. Oh, I can speak to, do you want me to speak to that as well? Okay, so also, just started last year, Owatonna, it's called O-Town Glam, for our kiddos that may not have the funds, but we want to be inclusive and have them experience all that is Owatonna, including prom. A local group has dedicated some people to providing both hair, makeup, accessories to students that want to be a part of prom but maybe wouldn't be able to do those things in order to go and fit in with everyone. That is going to be on April 26th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at United Methodist Church. And we actually have this flyer up around Owatonna High School, and I know it's floating on Facebook, and there are some in the back. It will be spread out through our community churches. Kids just need to use the QR code down here. They are very, very well aware of how to use it. And then they sign up through that, and then they can get complimentary hair, makeup, and nail services done by volunteer cosmetology students. Isn't that wonderful? So there also is, I believe, a GoFundMe page that's connected to, or account connected to that. If you go to O/Town on Facebook, you can donate. Okay, question? People usually call me.
Something on Facebook, it's like, okay, yeah.
He's a good outreach. We don't have a website. That might be something that we could do. I mean, we'd have to kind of talk to the district and see what, what they thought about that. But yes, we have people that want to donate, and usually they call into the office, and then they get up to me, and then I kind of let them know what we're in need of. And like I said, always the gift cards will allow us to replenish. So that's always an option. Anything else? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Needed to, ask you what you might need. That
For
might be
sure.
a direct way to, rather than going office to whatever.
Yeah.
So,
And I think a lot of people do that as well. Yeah. And there'll be different, organizations. I'll get calls from a church group, a book group, or book clubs, daycares. We've had donations from our area cosmetologists that want to donate supplies or products to our pantry as well. So, yeah, we accept any of that stuff. But we also want to, again, I want to keep it organized, and I want to keep it looking good so that it's not just overflowed with things that kids won't use or take, and then it becomes kind of a mess. So that's why I'm a little bit protective of, please just don't drop off bags assuming that that's what the kids want or need at this time. If they can kind of funnel through us, then myself and the other social workers can let you know. Okay. Thank you.
Hello. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I am Amanda Starks. I am the executive director of the Lighthouse of Southern MN, which, as I was introduced, originally Rachel's Light. I am just going to go through some slides. So our vision is restoring hope. Oh, you did get it to work. Okay, clicker. And thank you. It's interesting. So we're all connected. Everyone up here, we work together a lot in our own different lanes. So it's really cool to hear other people talk and see what they're doing and what all is happening, because it unfortunately changes day to day. So our vision is restoring hope and ending homelessness one person at a time. Oh, it does work. And then our mission is we serve those who are experiencing homelessness by providing support through tailored programming that fosters independence. We identify and address the unique challenges that each person faces while filling the gaps in resources to help them successfully transition to stable living. Okay, I'm gonna stop here. Just to briefly update you, so how many are familiar with Rachel's Light? Great, awesome. How many are familiar with Hospitality House? Perfect. Okay, so we were doing the same thing, different population. We had men at Hospitality House and women and children at Rachel's Light. They lost their executive director at the end of May, I would say, and they did know before that. So Maureen Schlobaum and I were having discussion about this. What does this look like? Do we hire a new executive director? Do we start partnering? How will this work to successfully help our homeless population? So we got together, had lots of conversations. We realized that we were lacking in the same areas, or some had a lack and we had a strength there, and they had a strength somewhere and we had a weakness there. So as we were having these conversations, we asked ourselves, does it make sense to, although we're not competing, but to compete for volunteers, for board members, for staff, or do we come together and we all work towards the same mission? It was kind of a no-brainer for myself and some others. We do better when we work together. We definitely are stronger when we are working together towards the same mission. We compared programming side to side. We did the same thing. We passionately believe in helping people get to the next step. We are not you get a cot, you get to leave for the day, and then come back, and I hope you have a job, and you have housing within 3 months, good luck. It's just not, that's not doable, right? That I don't even know anyone that can do all that on their own while facing traumatic events. So we have, like I said in our mission statement, we have tailored programming. We really, really believe in identifying challenges and barriers and helping people work through each challenge that they have to get them to the next step. So when they are in that housing, they can stay there. So Rachel's Light, and I can speak for Rachel's Light because that's where I've been, we worked really hard in creating a stabilization program. And so in that programming, we have found that it's been successful. Our success rate with people that have transitioned out is 86%, which is very amazing if you look at the shelter world. Hospitality House was doing the same kind of programming. So now we're just coming together and strengthening our programming and utilizing our staff and our board members and really bringing a really strong skill set together. So the cool thing with this, the merger happened January 1st, and a lot of people say, why the Lighthouse? Well, Rachel's Light, Hospitality House. So there you go, we have a lighthouse. And that, if you think about lighthouses, they're beacons of hope. They're guiding you in the storm. So it gives me goosebumps to this day. It's super cool. Everything really worked out the way it needed to work out. And now we are doing what we should do, come together and serve our homeless population. So here's some of these numbers. These are Rachel's Light numbers since 2020. Just because we are still trying to figure out all of Hospitality House's numbers. So we have had 670 referrals. That is insane if you think about it, because that's just the woman. You think about that, that's usually with 2 to 3 kids. So that number is easily tripled. No one knows this because we don't see it, like Nancy was talking about. You don't see people under a bridge. You don't see people outside with their cardboard. You don't see it. So we don't think it's happening, but it's happening. We have sheltered 240, and we've had 208 successes, which I strongly believe in the programming. You know, I sleep better at night knowing that we're doing everything we can to help people get to that next step. So we are just getting started. So far, since January 1st, we've had 47 referrals. We've sheltered 29, and we have had successes. They're just not up there yet. And I would say we're at 11 or 12, which we're into the beginning of March. So we're ready to go. We're ready to help. Then there's some stories of hope and a future. This is pulled from one we have there. We've had many birth experiences at Rachel's Light. I actually am proud to say I was a part of one. We really, again, go back to that you don't have to do life alone. You do not have to be the story you were told. You can change your story at any given point. We will stand with you. We believe in you. And we will support you as long as you're willing to do the work, right? We're not going to enable, we're going to empower. So these are cool little stories as you read through them. And that leads to the next crazy thing we're doing. We're expanding to help others, but I'll let Jolayne take the...
Amanda is more modest than she needs to be. The amount of heavy lifting that Rachel's Light and Hospitality House have done this last year, and that they will continue to do this next year to really meet the needs of our community, is unbelievable. So they're doing such good work. Again, my name is Jolayne. I'm the president of Oak Hill Community Connection. If that outside of that building looks familiar, it's because it's the old Mayo Clinic. If you haven't been in there in 20 years, not to worry, it still looks the same. Okay? Lots of mauve, lots of wallpaper. It's gorgeous. So, Oak Hill Community Connection, what is it? Where did it come from? This is not a new idea, folks. This is not a unique idea. This is not a unicorn at all. It's an idea that some of you have probably been a part of the conversation because it's been happening for longer than my 20 years in this community. But a lot of things in life is about timing, and the timing for this project is right. We have a group of nonprofit executive directors that believe in the power of collaboration. We have a group of community members that are very passionate about the population of the community that this will help serve, and we had a location. So the vision, it's super simple. It's a shared facility model that's going to provide short-term housing, the Lighthouse of Southern Minnesota, along with co-located services that specifically target our most vulnerable community members, okay? Short-term housing, this is not, like Amanda said, this is not 3 a.m., I need a place to stay, knock on the door. This is a referral system only. It is vetted, it is background checks, it's accountability, it's individualized programming. The building is located across the parking lot from St. Mary's School, and so our most concerning community members will not be allowed to sleep in the facility, okay? That's just one of the beauties of the situation. We've met with St. Mary's, they had a lot of really good questions, and after we had a really good conversation, they're very supportive of the project. And we're also gonna have co-located services in there that really focus on the support and stability of our most vulnerable community members. This is not a one-stop nonprofit location, it is very specific entities that can help build and encourage the independence and relaunch independence for people. Who we are, like I said, we're just a bunch of community members that we're kind of dumb and we don't know any better, and we're like, let's go do it. But we believe in the power of collaboration, okay? And we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and so we're gonna ask you all for money, don't worry, don't be surprised. But we're gonna ask you for money, and what we are doing is our board is we are fundraising to remodel the building to meet the needs of the entities that will be in there. After it's remodeled, we're gonna back away, almost like a mall, okay? The Lighthouse of Southern Minnesota is gonna maintain their identity. They will continue to do their fundraising for their operational expenses. Health Finder is another tenant partner. Again, same thing. They're gonna maintain their identity, continue to fundraise with their operational expenses. Community Pathways, they'll have a satellite location in the building. They will continue to fundraise. So we are the building managers. That's it. Okay, Nancy kind of updated my numbers and stole my thunder a little bit, but homelessness in our community is hidden, folks. Please do not underestimate the amount of pride and shame families experience when they're homeless, okay? January, I connected with Trina Casper, one of the school social workers, and she said at that time there was 161 students identified. Nancy just updated it right now at 170. Again, that's our early childhood kiddos to our seniors. That's our kindergartners that we're dropping off at school in the morning, and we say, go sit on the carpet, you need to learn how to read, and they don't know where they're sleeping, okay? Kids are petrified, parents are petrified. If somebody finds out that they're homeless, they're gonna lose their kids. So the 161, the 170 is probably 20% shy, would you say, Nancy? Than the reality of what our community is experiencing. Through this process, lots of really interesting and good conversations. So Matt Kotke, he's one of our board members. He might be familiar to you. He and I sat and talked about this project, and he's like, Jolayne, I don't believe you. I said, okay, you don't have to believe me for it to be true. He said, I've lived in Owatonna my entire life, and I've never seen a homeless person. And I said, no, you haven't. And I said, that's the point. I said, your vision of homelessness is living under a bridge, is shopping carts, it's tent encampments. And I said, that's okay that that's your vision because you don't live in the industry, right? Like, that's your normal. You don't know, and don't feel bad that you don't know, but now that you do know, what are you gonna do about it? And he called me 2 days later and he said, I have to be on your board because I need to do something about this. And that's where the beauty comes in, right? Don't feel bad if you don't know, but once you know, be a part of the change. We've got great programs in town, but we have a population of individuals that don't have any support. Single dads have nowhere to go with their kids right now. We've got dual parent households that have nowhere to go. And if you're on the verge of homelessness, asking you to split from your family is the last thing that you're gonna do. Larger families with 3 or more kiddos, that's really hard to find housing and shelter for, especially like blended families that have 17-year-old, 12-year-old, 8 and 4-year-old. In those situations, and teenagers, we love them. I have 3 of them, but they're not the easiest human beings to deal with all the time. And so if there's a blended family situation, oftentimes one parent has to make a really hard choice to save the placement in the shelter for the younger siblings, and they tell that teenager, you have to find somewhere else to stay. And then that teenager ends up in unfortunate situations, unsafe situations. If 1 or 2 of those teens are lucky enough to have friends that are part of our families, because all 4 of us right here have had kids sleeping on our couch and sleeping on our kids' floor because that's just what we do, but not all of those kids are that lucky. Couples over the age of 55. So I work over at Trinity Lutheran Church and I'm director of outreach, and one of my roles within that job description is someone has an emergency and they come in, they're looking for shelter, gas, or food. Last spring I had a couple that was like 64 years old and they came in and they said, we're homeless, can you help? And I'm like, wait a second, you gotta talk to me. Like, sit down, it's a church, I'll find a donut and a cup of coffee. How did you land here? And they said, we moved in with our son and daughter-in-law to help provide daycare and alleviate some financial costs and burdens. And we got into it, didn't get along with our son and daughter-in-law for a variety of reasons, and they kicked us out and we're living in our car. Can you help? And because this system is the way that it is right now, my response was, yep, here's a crappy $10 gift card to Quick Trip, and here's a list of resources. That's not helpful, folks. Life on the margins. And so our friends over at United Way have done a deep dive into what this looks like specifically for Steele County. Poverty rate in Steele County is about 9%, and if you're at $31,000 a year or less for a family of 4, you're living at the federal poverty line. More importantly, I want you to focus on that ALICE score. That's Asset Limited Income Constrained Employees. 33% of our community is 1 paycheck away from being homeless, okay? We, through a variety of life situations and choices, are very embedded with a single mom and her 2 kids, and she works in the service industry. And if daycare calls and they say, you gotta come pick him up, he's got a fever, she panics because if she misses 1 day of work, she misses her utility bill. And so then it's a phone call to me. If I'm busy, it's a phone call to my mother, it's a phone call to my husband, and we triage it and we figure it out because she can't miss work, right? If you're a server and you break your ankle and you're out of work for 6 weeks, that's horribly detrimental to your financial situation, your stability for you and your family. We're a really smart group of people, and if the reasons associated with homelessness and life on the margins were easy, we would have had it figured out, but they're not. They're complicated. It's costs associated with housing, daycare, and medical. That's pretty low-hanging fruit. An unexpected medical situation, a significant illness, someone gets sick, they've got long-term ramifications, family or employment changes. I did this presentation last spring to a group of retired women, and afterwards, I saw 2 of the gals in the community, and the one gal said, thank you for coming in and talking because I know what you're talking about. And her friend looked at her and said, I've known you my entire life. No, you don't. And she said, my sister was married and had 2 babies, and her husband woke up one morning, and he said, I'm leaving you, and I'm taking my paycheck with you. And she said, and my sister and her 2 kids were homeless. And her friend had no idea. And so it happened so quickly. Barriers to support, lack of transportation, and reliable transportation are barriers to support. We have a smart bus in town. It's great, but it takes an hour if you live on the south end to go all the way around to hit your spots, and that's just if you're riding. Like if I have to get to work, I have to drop kids off at daycare, I have to get to a doctor's appointment, it's not physically possible to make all of those hits, and then you gotta make it on time too. Like I've got kids, I haven't been on time for years, right? So chemical and behavioral health needs, they're also a barrier to support, and lack of access or not having awareness of access is a barrier. We have a lot of really good people doing really good things in town, But when you live under constant stress and duress, to say, here's a list of providers, start making phone calls, that's not realistic. And pride and shame, if I make one phone call and they tell me no, I'm not calling anybody else. I don't have it in me. And so that cycle just perpetuates and stays, and it's so hard to get through. If we've got some current business owners, retired business owners, just people that love numbers and finance in this world, thank you for your brain working that way, because mine does not. However, there is a financial impact and there is an employee impact when you're living in these circumstances. Your ability to stay focused doesn't really exist. To learn new skills is really, really hard. To maintain health and wellness is even harder. So you're showing up with this constant angst behind you. How am I going to feed my kids? Where are we going to sleep tonight? I got to get them signed up for this. They have to make it to school. Every time that phone rings, your adrenal glands shoot up. And then you're trying to focus on work. It just doesn't, it's not effective, it's not healthy, it's not efficient. It also causes increased safety hazards, increased medical expenses for employees and businesses, higher rate of absenteeism, and if you've got kids, double or triple that. And so when I'm under stress and duress and sick, my kids know it and they feel it. They might not know why, and that's okay, but they feel it and they take that on as well, so they're missing school. If my little one who's in first grade can't go to school because they're sick and I don't have daycare, then my high schooler has to stay home. So now we've got 2 kids that aren't going to school when they need to be in school because I can't miss work. So that's the ray of sunshine of where we're living in Steele County, and the solution is Oak Hill Community Connections. This physical location is going to provide increased resources to our community members. It's going to provide increased collaboration that will make everyone stronger and better. This right here is just a quick little highlight layout of what the building is going to look like. It's 63,000 square feet, because why not? We're not touching the basement, not doing any remodel in there. The main level is going to consist of the Lighthouse Women and Children's Program, as well as the Family Program. Health Finders Community Collaborative, which is the previous Steele County Free Clinic. They're currently operating in that space. We were going to build them out a better space that is more conducive for their dental, medical, and behavioral health needs that they are providing. What else do we have in there? Community Pathways is going to have a satellite location, and so they will be the greeters and the navigators of the building for our clients because they do it really, really well. They're going to have a mini food pantry in there, mini clothing, household goods items, and they're also going to have laundry services that will be free to the community. And so, again, the building will be open as a standard business would, 8 to 5 or whatever those hours are, but it's laid out in a way that if Health Finders does evening hours, clients will have direct access. That does not impact the shelter space. Community Pathways has evening hours, direct access without impacting the other areas. The second level is where we're going to co-locate our nonprofits in their office space. And so Sparrow, which previously was South Central Human Relations Center, they are moving case managers that work directly with our homeless population. It's called their Path Program and Project Home. They're moving in there. Their crisis response team is going to be co-located up there. The Lighthouse is going to have their business area and staff up there. The Salvation Army is going to have office space in there. So they are going to continue to facilitate in the community. They're not going to have the storefront, but they will provide their financial resources and programming that they do right now. And we're working with other individual entities that are still serving this population and having conversations about what does that look like for them in the building. There's conference rooms that are embedded in the building, and so if I'm living at the Lighthouse, I can meet with my case manager. If I have county supports, if I have someone from Community Pathways, we can all meet on site, and everybody's at the table, okay? What am I missing? I think that's it. Oh, trauma. Trauma is a massive impact in ways that if you haven't ever experienced trauma, you'll have no idea, and I'm hopeful that you don't know what it's like to experience trauma. But it impacts people in every single day, all throughout the day, and we're designing this space with a trauma-informed lens. And so the architect that we're working with has history and experience with trauma-informed care, and so sight lines, color palettes, room layouts, it's all done under the assumption of trauma for everyone. Financial approach, I hit on this a little bit. The financial campaign for the community is a $4 million ask. We're at about $2.1, $2.2 million right now. We're We're going out to the community for the public phase of the campaign, the beginning of June. So if anybody has $1.8 million that they're just desperate to get rid of, let's talk afterwards, okay? But we're gonna do the build out, we're gonna do the nuts and bolts. After that, we're gonna be the landlord. And what we're gonna do, the financial approach is a net zero profit. So whatever the expenses are will be passed on to the tenants. There is no profit motive. Nobody's making any money. And what that's gonna do, that will allow us to charge 2/3 market rate for these tenants to come into the space so they can have more of their money that can go directly towards the service of their clientele. Our faith community, which Associated is one of them, has really stepped up, and the faith community is gonna cover the rent for the Lighthouse space in the building to the tune of like $72,000 to $73,000 a year ongoing. It's gonna become a part of their budget line item, so that's huge. So really the most impactful thing that we can't measure is the collaboration of having all of these people in one building to serve the people that need us the most. So I walk into the building and I know Tina, the volunteer at Community Pathways, and I need a resource, and my success rate significantly increases when Tina says, you know what, let me walk you down the hall so you can meet my friend Amanda. You know what, let me call my friend Nancy at the high school because you have a high schooler, and then we can get this taken care of. Instead of, here's your list of people to call, go sit in your car, good luck. Very nice picture of downtown. Okay, thanks. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Julie and bring us home with transitional housing.
Thank you, Jolayne. I want to begin by just letting you know that I feel so spoiled because I always say this, I have the greatest job in the world. And it's because I get to hear thank you every day. And I hear it like you all do from people from all walks of life, typically people with families, people with disabilities, people who are working but struggling to make ends meet, which is a significant population that we serve. Transitional Housing of Steele County, our formal name is Steele County Transitional Housing, but we're known as Transitional Housing of Steele County, began in the year 2000, and it was initiated by a group of pastors. Now, some of you in the room were part of this. You are our founding fathers and our founding mothers. In that year, we were overwhelmed with people approaching churches wanting sanctuary, just a place to stay for that night, even just shelter for that evening. People with families oftentimes, but it was single folks too, men who didn't have a shelter to go to, women who didn't have a shelter to go to, and families who were being split up. So the churches got together. Typically it was pastors, it was some school social workers, it was other social workers in the community who got together and just said, this is unacceptable. This is not how a community should be. We need to have a place for people to go. And the thought at the time was, it's not enough to just go ahead and solve the initial crisis of homelessness. We have to do more. We have to look at the fundamental root causes of homelessness, what is causing people to cycle into the problems, and how do we get them out of that cycle, and how do we empower them? So the response was very grassroots. A number of pastors got together and looked at other models. And there was a model in the Twin Cities called ELIM Transitional Housing. And so they birthed us. They came down, a woman by the name of Sue came down and said, let's get together, let's think about how we can make an impact. And we modeled ourselves after this organization. That was 25 years ago. Since then, on average, we've served every year at any given time 20 families in our 2-year transitional housing program, and then we've served on average close to 60 families for eviction prevention. Programmatically, we've had tremendous success. The idea is one of empowerment. Now, earlier you heard Amanda talk about we're not enabling, we're empowering. This is an empowerment model. We work with families in our 2-year transitional housing program, and we work with individuals as well to get them into housing. We provide the first month's rent and damage deposit for a rental unit, and then for a period of 2 years, we work with that family by subsidizing their rent monthly based on income. The family is responsible for part of the rent, and we are responsible for part of the rent, and for a period of 2 years, in an ongoing basis, we fund that rent. And what we do is we start out with a certain amount, And it's kind of like this. In the beginning, we're subsidizing perhaps half or slightly more, sometimes 75%, sometimes all of it. And every 3 months, we recalculate based on income. And we are gradually paying less every 3 months. We recalculate so that at the end of the program, the client is fully self-sufficient. They are making their rent payments on time, and they're able to pay that rent on time. They are at a point where they can continue to transition in place and pay that rent. That is the concept. Now, there are exceptions. There are people who do need a little bit more time in the program. There are some who have health issues and so forth. But on the whole, this is kind of how it works. And so by the time they leave the program, they are fully self-sufficient. The second program that we have is one called eviction prevention, and that is typically one-time assistance. 1 or 2 months of one-time assistance. And the idea is people who fall into that category that Jolayne was talking about, people who might have something unexpected come up, an unexpected turn of events. Perhaps their car broke down and they needed help making that car payment, but they just couldn't, and so they had to make that car payment for their repair. And they needed that to get to work. Well, now they're behind in their rent. Very commonly, it's a medical situation that comes up that's unexpected. A surgery or a birth, and very often a family disruption, what we were just talking about earlier, a divorce, something that happens overnight, and people need help making that rent payment. So that's one-time assistance. It does not include case management, but there's a lot of support that goes through that we do use with that one-time assistance, and typically people will stabilize after 1 or 2 months of help. And what you'll find is it's the most harm-reductive way to help the family, to keep them right where they are, to not allow them to cycle into homelessness, to not allow them to cycle into that poverty cycle. And so what we try to do is stop the cycle of homelessness before it begins. Prevention. It's the best way in terms of taxpayers, and it's the most harm-reductive way to help the family. Those 2 programs have tremendous results. We follow the families and individuals for 6 months. We call them after they've graduated from our program. We make sure that they are still housed. We ask them if they're making their rent payments on time and if they're employed. And they do very well. They do very well in the program, and they do very well for the 6 months following the program. We also put a special emphasis on people who are fleeing domestic violence. Half of our funding actually has come from the Office on Violence Against Women, which is part of the Department of Justice, and we work with the Crisis Resource Center. We partner with them on a grant, and it's a fee-for-service agreement. So we still work with the families who are fleeing domestic violence to get into housing. We cover the first month's rent and damage deposit. We provide 2 years of ongoing rental subsidy and case management in the home. And then we also partner with the Crisis Resource Center to offer advocacy and safety planning and counseling. So it's a beautiful partnership that we've had for years. Very successful program with incredible outcomes. I want to emphasize what all of the speakers have talked about tonight, and that is that homelessness is under the radar. The families in our program are terrified that if they identify themselves as being homeless, that their family will be disrupted, that government will interfere, that they will lose their children. So these are folks, they're not stupid, they're homeless. They know what can happen, and what can happen if people are stigmatizing their family, what can happen if there are misrepresentations. So they are extremely successful at hiding their homelessness. And it is also a point of pride for them. Those who do come into our program and are able to receive the services have such incredible success, particularly those who are situationally homeless, the people who are fleeing domestic violence. They can go back to the master's degree they were working on. They can go back to their lives once that disruption is gone and the abuser is out of the family. They can go back to being financially independent when in the past their finances were tied to their abuser. We see such tremendous success with the domestic violence victims that are in our program. If we were to write a film, you would say, that's a great movie, but could never really happen. We have a woman in our program who is a real estate agent, and she is a yoga instructor. And 2 years ago, she was living in her car in the Walmart parking lot, fleeing domestic violence. We have another woman who's graduated from our program. She was in jail, and then she was in her car fleeing domestic violence for weeks, very concerned that she was going to go back to using again. And she was in a very dangerous situation. He darn near killed her. She is now a counselor at the University of Maryland, helping people who are in similar situations. We see miracles every day. Every day. I don't consider myself an incredibly religious person, but I see miracles every single day at Transitional Housing. So I want to thank you. We close all of our board meetings with an inspiration statement, and this statement was developed years ago when the agency began, and it was a group of pastors who wrote this inspiration. We close all of our board meetings with it. On the street, I saw a small girl, cold and shivering in a thin dress, with little hope of a decent meal. I became angry and said to God, "Why do you permit this? Why don't you do something?" That night, God replied, "I have. I made you." So we are the ones we've been waiting for. And I want to thank you for having the courage to invite us and to take this role seriously, your role as activists and as social justice seekers, and continuing to do all the good that you can in all the ways that you can. So bless you all, and bless the work that you do. Thank you. And then at this time, I would like to invite the community to ask any questions of our panelists. You can pass the mic. These folks?
Thank you for everything y'all do. I saw this ad on Facebook because algorithms. I write a lot of stuff about homelessness and do a lot of things about it. And I'm a chaplain out here. That's what I do out here. And after work, I'm like, what am I going to say when I get to this event? Because I didn't really know what it was. And I swear to God, if you ask me, I'll show it to you. I wrote what y'all said here before coming here tonight. You know how you think you know it all and you can help? Y'all are doing what's supposed to be done. Thank you for saying the truth also. We're going to ask you for some money because you're going to need it. But this is beautiful, and that's all I have to say.
I would want to say thank you also to everybody, and beautiful job. I worked with Hospitality House, and I think that the only additional comment I would make is there's what I would say is a societal overlay of sort of a lack of empathy for men. A different expectation. I don't know that it's a higher expectation, but even maybe a greater fear of the shame that I'm not doing what traditionally maybe I'm expected or thought I should do as a man. And so we had men who couldn't stay at the house because they had a family and they were not going to leave their family. So I just wanted to add that, to keep that in mind as well. So thank you so much. Beautiful work.
We came in, we hired a licensed therapist, and men don't want, as you were saying, there's a lot of shame with mental health. Men don't want to leave and make therapy appointments, but she comes in, there's a room in the house now, and they have a safe space to do therapy, which is super cool, and they're accepting that. And Hospitality House can't have children. They'd have just the single men. So the cool thing about expanding into this new space with a family shelter is it's going to be a space for single dads too. And that we don't have in this state. You don't see it, you know, with the couples staying together. So it's super exciting, and thank you for mentioning that.
Hello. Thank you for all your work that you do. And I just wanted to share that this is very eye-opening. I attended the poverty simulator by, I think, Katrina Gasper. In United Way, I think, and that was what we go back to whatever you were saying about families experience like homeless and in the whole cycle, and it is expensive to be poor because everything, yeah, you don't have enough money for the ride or whatever, like it gets expensive, and you get behind in your rent, and then you get fees and all of that. So I saw like firsthand like the newcomers when they come and they establish and they're usually homeless, and not even the shock of the culture in the new country, but also the language barrier. So it was like something that I was there at one point, and it was nice that you're connecting all the resources with all together. But I also like I'm very passionate about that because I was in that situation at one point.
I had a question about the Husky Pantry. You said the students come in and shop. And I'm assuming that there isn't any exchange of money or anything like that, but yeah, okay.
Hygiene supplies like deodorant or shampoo or body wash, or whether it's toothpaste, toothbrush. We do have even laundry detergent and bleach and things that they can use to clean, and of course food and school supplies as well, and clothing. All donations, so they shop without paying a cent.
How do the four of you keep from burning out, since it just keeps coming?
Thank you, and I wanted to mention too, thank you for that question. That's a beautiful question. Yeah, the question that the gentleman asked is, how do we keep from burning out as providers? And a lot of you are providers, and I know that you've experienced this too. The truth is, you can love what you do and still feel burned out. I mean, it doesn't mean you don't love your job. It just part of it goes with it, and I think self-care is so important. One of the things that I try to do is look at, it was Mother Teresa who said, I try to just look at the person right in front of me, because if you start to think about all of the people that you're not reaching, you're going to get overwhelmed. I'm going to focus on this person right in front of me, and I'm going to do my level best with everything to help them. And then at the end of the day, a lot of times in our office, we'll light a candle and say a prayer and bless and release everyone and pray that they're going to be okay tonight. We come back the next day to live another day. And part of the reward is the intrinsic value of seeing people get housed, getting somebody across that threshold into their new apartment and giving them the key to their new apartment and watching them sign the lease. In our agency, the landlord and the client have the lease together. And so watching the landlord and the client sign the lease, I try to think about those moments, and I try to think about when they're walking across the threshold at Riverland Community College to get their associate's degree. I mean, it's just, there's so many beautiful moments, and that's what sustains us. But sometimes medication can help. You can go see your doctor and get on Zoloft or occasional Ativan. So that's in the glass of red wine. So sometimes just mental health care too, like just going and seeing a therapist. And I know there are therapists and social workers in this room. I think sometimes medication, honestly, I make a joke about it, but I honestly think sometimes we do need medication, and we need therapy, we need religion, and whatever we could consider to be our spiritual connection. We need socialization, big time. We need to be among people who are doing similar work. And that fellowship is so important, so important.
All of that, she's absolutely correct. Can you hear me? I know what it feels like to not have money to get your kids stuff. So part of my world is doing this work, and then I've got one foot in the construction world. And I'm going to tell you, at the beginning of a recession, when you start a construction company, banks aren't giving you any money. And so I know what it's like to stand in line and have your credit card declined with your kids right there and getting groceries. And I know what it's like to not have the $30 to get your kids shoes. And so I can't, like, it matters. It so matters, and it takes one. It takes one person. Like, Miss Sonia, I'm looking at you and Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Like, you guys preach about it all day long. It takes one person to impact the life of a child.
And not only that, to add back with you.
Yeah.
I have just your services with people on my caseload.
Yes.
And it's been very beneficial.
Yes.
All of you guys. And you think with that number of students and the adults, they're out there.
They're out there.
And I have them on my caseload, and that's why I'm here. And what all four of you guys are doing up there is remarkable. And that project that's coming up is going to be fantastic.
And it's going to take a village, right?
Yes,
and
it
so,
does.
Like,
it does.
And so for the kids, it takes one. For the adults, it takes one. Like
Yes.
this family that is now very much embedded in my family, it's a single mom with 2 little kids, and nobody believed in her.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody believed in her until she landed at Rachel's Light 5 years ago.
And
Because they believed in her and they connected her with mentors, she now has a family. Her babies have older brothers. They've got grandparents. All it takes is one to believe in somebody else, and it changes the trajectory of their life.
And just think, if I didn't have your information and I haven't came to any of these, how could I provide for all the families that I'm trying to help with?
Yeah. So
and
matters.
That's what you guys,
It
that's
just-
what matters. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you might have said something about this earlier, but I know one of the things that, as I've talked to different people around town and we are trying to understand, you know, what is this new Lighthouse and what is this Oak Hill CC? One of the questions that a lot of people ask is, how are you going to protect the people that are the battered women when you've got men in the same facility? Can you address that tonight? But but even more so, make sure that you address that in other discussions, because I've heard it a lot of times and people don't know, and I don't know either, so thank you for telling me tonight.
Yep, so, and Amanda, you can speak to this too. So the physical layout of the building, the shelter space is on one side. And so that's not open to anybody from the public. That's not, I'm gonna go get my needs met over here and then I'm gonna walk through the halls of the shelter space. It is background check, it is secure entrance, it is secure exit. The one portion of the footprint is women and children only, the exact same way that they're run right now. And then there's a family side. And the family layout is almost mini apartments. There are some of the spaces that are, I would like envision like a hotel room that has the couch and then the back has a bed and, you know, some dressers and stuff like that. So that's maybe for a single dad and a kid, but then we're also gonna have space for larger families that has their own mini like studio kitchen and then 3 bedrooms, and so our parents can practice routine and bedtime and structure and consistency and learn new skills and relearn old skills that they've lost because of life. Does that help answer your question, or do you want a little bit more from Amanda?
Hello. Hi. I'm Leslie. And I have a question about, okay, I'll just give you a scenario. My boyfriend kicked me out. I have no place to go tonight. Nobody will take me. In Owatonna, where do I go? Who do I contact? The police won't help me because, I don't know, I don't have any, whatever. How does our community respond to a 1 or 2 night deal?
Okay, so you're referring to like an emergency type situation. Okay, so yes, that is the one thing that we do not have an emergency shelter here. We do have the crisis response team. We have a crisis resource center, and you're correct, law enforcement cannot help take care of that. Our faith community is really great in helping with hotel vouchers until we can connect to different resources, or maybe it's a shelter in hiding. So there's CADA and other places in Rochester and Mankato, but we do not have an emergency type shelter where you can show up in the middle of the night.
I don't have a car either, so I'm
Yeah, so what, yeah. And that is definitely something that we need to have further conversation with after, you know, we establish what we're doing right now.
There's a great Lutheran population out here. And the Lutherans of, no. That thing, no. I went to Lutheran college. Long story short, when I was in Phoenix, they should do this everywhere, but limitations are limitations. But there are some Lutheran programs where the churches are open for those type of situations. I thought that's where you were going, but that's one of the things I was going to suggest tonight. If y'all were open for suggestions of what can we do, contact the Lutheran church and ask them what is that national program called where y'all partner with churches and come together and house people overnight and everybody goes through it. It's not a shelter, but it's an emergency situation. There's enough churches out here to do that.
I have probably a three-pronged question. And what a fabulous job you've done. I've learned more tonight. Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm assuming that if all of us wanted to do something, you couldn't use us as volunteers.
Okay, so we need every single one of you. Absolutely. We need finances, time, talent, and energy. Whatever you have in those buckets to offer is what we're going to need.
And that's for the Oak Hill project.
That's for the Oak Hill project. It's the expansion of the Lighthouse. It's the, transitional housing, the school. Once this project is done, there's going to be other programs that are created because of it. We're going to need parent mentors. We've got parents that need someone to come in and hold babies and say, you're doing a really good job, and think about it like this. Absolutely. Okay. Community Pathways needs more volunteers. They're going to have 2 locations now. So if you like to chit-chat with people, you just stand at the front and welcome them and treat them with dignity and respect, and it will change their life. Yes, we need every single one of you in here to make this thing work.
Thank you. And is there a root cause under all of this?
There's about 100 of them. Pick one. And I will tell you, nobody wakes up in the morning and decides to be homeless. They just don't. Oftentimes it's a domino effect. It's one thing that starts another thing, that starts another thing, that starts another thing. Yes.
The rising rent costs. I mean, if you want to just look at something, there are so many root causes. But lately, the rent, it's gone up 23% over last year. And so we have people who are not able to make their rent payments, and the wages are stagnant comparatively because of inflation. So people are not able to make their rent payments, and they become significantly behind in their rent. So that's significant. Of course, domestic violence. Half of our clients are domestic violence survivors and immediately fleeing domestic violence. Mental health issues, chemical dependency. But a lot of times it's just the economy. It's just how it ebbs and flows, and people get laid off, or things that just happen that are unexpected. But it tends to be, lately it really is the rising rent costs, just pushing people out.
So that gives me an understanding. I sometimes feel like I don't know where I can be used.
Sure, yeah.
Or how we as a city can address what happens when the rent goes up.
I think you really hit on some really great volunteer opportunities. I would say Community Pathways is perfect. That's a perfect place because you're working directly with people experiencing homelessness. Every day they see homeless people and they're in the front line. So I would say Community Pathways. With transitional housing, we need people to mentor people. We need people to help with budgeting, teaching people how to budget. The cornerstone of our program is our case management. People going into the home and teaching people how to budget, teaching them how to, and helping them find work. But we can use other people to help us with our case management. So mentoring and budgeting, working with people that way.
As we grow and expand and merge, we have plenty of volunteer opportunities, whether, like Jolayne said, mentoring, or teaching budgeting, like Julie said, or helping with committees or board work. There's so many different things that go on in a nonprofit world, and we really run on volunteers. I mean, we definitely have our operations, but if you have a skill set, we can use it, guaranteed. Yeah.
So there are boards of directors, committees, fund development, event planning, or if you know how to cook. Like, it's that simple. So this family that is now our family, she's like, where did,
Church, so it's all about food, right? And we're Lutheran, so a lot of hot dish and casserole and dessert. But like cooking a meal for your kids, people don't know how to do that. Like with our new bonus family, we call them our bonus kids and our bonus mom, like she doesn't know how to cook. Nobody taught her that. As a child, they didn't have consistent dinner times. She didn't have adults in her world that are like, okay, this is what you're gonna do. And so just the basic, come and sit at my kitchen table and watch what I'm doing. And she's like, and that's dinner? I'm like, it's that easy. And so within this new space for the Lighthouse, and I know of people that go to Hospitality House right now and they're making meals and they're making cookies, you're showing humanity and you're teaching a skill. It's that simple.
What's going to happen to the Hospitality House building and the Rachel's Light building when the new space is developed? So just to clarify, Hospitality House is staying where it's at. The men will stay there. They're not moving. They will continue programming with just the men's program there. It's not leaving for multiple reasons, right? We're going to keep them there. The House of Meriden, we're having conversations with the church. So what that looks like, I can't say right now, but we're hoping to create another space that's transitional as we develop a lot of these different programs. So we will move in once construction's done, and we're hoping to work with the church out there to continue to help the people we serve.
You had mentioned you mentioned that rents have gone up a lot. Is there any way that those things can be?
There are communities and cities that have done that work, and capping, and we haven't done any policy changes yet or recommended anything, but there are communities that have done that. Rent mitigation, rent capping, it has happened in some communities in the U.S. So that could be a potential advocacy or political policy type move. Our agency has not taken measures to do that, but we are concerned. They continue to rise, and they're rising substantially, and it's pushing people out. People are facing evictions at a much higher rate.
Yeah, wow.
It's scary.
Okay, well, I have a dozen questions, so we're running out of time, or we're out of time. So I'm going to thank you once again. This was incredibly enlightening for all of us. So thank you, thank you, thank you.